In the great library of the soul, there's some stories that aren't just stories. They're more like spiritual blueprints. They talk about this world of pure light, of wisdom that never ends, a reality you can't get to by ship or by foot, but only through the raw, powerful desire of your soul. Today, we're unlocking one of those stories, the incredible journey of Rabbi Chiya, a sage who tried to bridge the gap between our world and the next, all for just one glimpse of his master.
So I want you to picture this. It's twilight in ancient Galilee. Rabbi Chiya, this giant of wisdom, is all alone. And he's not just sad. His entire being is on fire with this deep, deep longing for his teacher, the holy Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, who has already passed on into the Celestial Academy. So he begins a process. He starts fasting, quieting all the noise of the body. He prays, and his tears, they're falling on this ancient stone. But these aren't just tears of grief. They are pure distilled yearning. Every tear, every moment of hunger is literally a knock on heaven's door, a focused attempt to make the very veil between worlds just a little bit thinner. And the door opens. In a vision, his consciousness is just lifted. He's ascending, not through space, but through different states of being, until he arrives at the Meshvita Durakia, the Celestial Academy. And what he sees is this vast hall made of living light, just filled with these luminous souls, all learning the deepest secrets of creation. And right there, at the very head of it all, radiating a light that makes everything else shine, sits his master, Rabbi Shimon. He's not just another soul. He's like a sun among stars, the absolute center of this world of wisdom.
Okay, let's pause and really dive into this. What we just described is beautiful. It's poetic for sure. But according to the mystical texts, it's not just a pretty story. They describe it as a technical process, like a repeatable procedure with very specific inputs that lead to predictable outputs. You can almost think of it as a soul sending a connection request to a higher dimensional server and actually getting a response. So that's really the core question we're digging into. How does this actually work? See, Rabbi Chiya's incredible longing wasn't just some random emotion. It was a signal. It was a request for access, a ping to a divine network. And all his actions, the fasting, the tears, they were the authentication protocols he needed to establish a secure connection. So now let's unpack the technical manual, the spiritual physics behind this whole mystical journey. The whole thing kicks off with this key concept: Kisufin. In Hebrew, it means this incredibly intense, soul-deep yearning or longing. But in the framework we're talking about, it's not just a feeling. It's the very first step in a cosmic communication protocol. It's the ping, right? The initial handshake request sent from a lower node, that's us, the human being, to a higher one. It's the declaration of intent that gets the whole process rolling. So what we've got here is basically a multi-factor authentication protocol for getting into a higher reality. First, the yearning. That's your initial signal request. Then the fasting. That's all about refining the hardware, your physical body, to make it compatible with the higher realm's operating system. And finally, the tears of devotion. Think of those as the cryptographic key. They're the proof of your sincerity that lets you bypass the spiritual firewalls. When all those conditions are met, boom, access granted. The connection goes through. The mystics are clear on this. The upper worlds are literally designed to respond when they get a correctly formatted request. It's a system. Exactly. This isn't about just sitting around hoping for some random act of grace. It's about understanding and actually engaging with a system of spiritual physics where specific actions create causal, predictable effects. So let's break down the actual mechanics of each of those steps. Okay, mechanic number 1, yearning. The Book of the Gates of Light talks about prayer as an ascent, moving from one level to the next. This intense yearning, the Kisufin, it creates what you could almost call a spiritual vacuum. You know how like attracts like? Well, when a soul down here intensely desires to connect with a higher state of being, it creates a kind of pressure differential. That void exerts a pull, drawing light and consciousness from above down to fill it. That's what literally opens a gate, a pathway to a higher reality. Now for the second mechanic, fasting. This is so cool. The Book of the Tree of Knowledge is Good gives this incredible metaphor. It compares our bodies to a system with 2 main channels, the esophagus for physical food and the windpipe for spiritual expression, like prayer. The esophagus is tied to the bloody, physical life force. So fasting, by denying the physical, it refines the whole body. It essentially turns the red channel of physical desire into a pure white channel for spiritual transmission. Basically, you're turning down the body's static so you can receive a much, much clearer signal from up high.
And that brings us to mechanic number 3, vision. I mean, how do you actually see these higher realms? The Book of Grace to Abraham explains that we all have an eye of the soul, but it can get covered by these shells, these klipot, which are formed from our own ego-driven junk. These shells create a kind of spiritual blindness. So the purification process, the fasting, the tears, that's what systematically strips these shells away. And this leads to a state they call hashva'at hatsura, or equivalence of form. And here's the key. You can only perceive something you are similar to. When your inner state gets refined to match the frequency, the wavelength of the Celestial Academy, the gateway just becomes visible. You've tuned your receiver to the right station.
And finally, there's the role of the destination itself, Rabbi Shimon. He wasn't just some person Rabbi Chiya missed. In this whole system, a tzaddik, a righteous person, is a living conduit. The Book of Holy Communion says they are the ones who bind heaven and earth. They're like a merkabah, a divine vehicle. In our network analogy, Rabbi Shimon is a primary node. He's the master server with the highest possible bandwidth for transmitting divine light and wisdom. So connecting with him isn't just about seeing an old friend, it's about plugging your terminal directly into the mainframe of revelation. And so, with the signal sent, the vessel totally refined, and the alignment achieved, Rabbi Chiya's connection is a success. He's in. He enters these supernal realms. But what he finds isn't some cloudy, vague heaven. No, it's a structured, organized, and deeply intricate reality. That's right. I mean, the Kabbalistic texts describe these inner worlds with incredible, incredible detail. They lay them out as a series of 7 concentric palaces, or heikalat, and each one has a specific gatekeeper, a specific function, all the way from the first entry gate guarded by an angel named Tahariel to the innermost throne room, the Holy of Holies, which is presided over by Metatron. These aren't just fuzzy metaphors. They're described as totally distinct dimensional zones, each with its own protocols for getting in. And this really gets to the purpose of the whole academy. The souls inside these halls, they aren't just resting on clouds. They are active, they're engaged in this constant joyful learning. The texts describe them being anointed with spiritual oils, dressed in robes of pure light, and studying the very source code of creation. Can you imagine a place of just absolute focus, where the only thing that exists is the pursuit of truth? The feeling is supposed to be this incredible warmth, this clarity, and an all-encompassing wisdom. It's a vibrant world of pure consciousness. Now, I know all of this can feel incredibly abstract, maybe a little far out there. So to really bring it home, we're going to reframe this entire mystical process using 2 modern analogies. The idea is to make these ancient truths totally concrete and accessible, whether you're a kid or, a cosmic engineer. All right, let's have some fun with this. We'll start with our first analogy. If you were trying to explain this to a kid, Rabbi Chiya's journey is pretty much the plot of an epic video game. Now seriously, think about it. Step 1, you accept the main quest. Find Master Shimon in the hidden sky world. But to get there, you gotta complete a series of missions. First up is the fasting mission, where you have to power down your physical shields to boost your spirit energy bar. Next, you gotta grind for some rare items, sincerity gems, and you can only collect those by completing the Tears of Longing mission. Once you have enough energy and enough gems, you go up to the portal. You present your items, prove you're a worthy player, and boom, the gate to the Celestial Academy level unlocks. You go in, you meet the Wise Master, and you don't fight him. You learn from him, you level up, and you get a brand new wisdom power-up. I absolutely love that. It perfectly captures the spirit of the journey. Okay, but now, for the adults in the room. Let's switch gears and look at this through the lens of, say, cosmic engineering or high-level network communications. Right. So from this perspective, what we're really talking about is accessing a higher dimensional knowledge system. The intense yearning, the Kisufin, that initiates the handshake protocol. The devotional acts like fasting and prayer, they act as cryptographic keys. They're the proof of work that validates the user and proves the system is free from the malware of ego. The angelic guardians of those heikalat, they're basically sophisticated, multi-layered firewalls. The tzaddik, Rabbi Shimon, is the primary node, the root server with the highest possible throughput of divine light, or shefa. And the successful result? The user, Rabbi Chiya, is granted temporary root access to download a compressed packet of pure wisdom straight from the source. And that really brings us to the very heart of this entire journey. What this story is telling us is that the universe isn't some cold, empty, random place. It's a vast, living, interconnected academy, a multi-layered consciousness.
And yeah, it might be hidden from our everyday sight, but access is possible. And the price of admission isn't money or power, it's something way more valuable: the total, sincere, and refined dedication of your heart. So in the end, Rabbi Chiya's journey is so much more than just an old story. It's a map. It's a technical manual that details a timeless technology for spiritual connection. It lays out a real, replicable process, a pathway of ascent that, according to these sources, is available to any soul that truly and purely wants to connect with its source. It's a blueprint for bridging worlds. Thank you for joining us for this complete journey through the Pardes. We hope these ancient truths help you and your family improve your own dimensions this week. If you enjoyed this full chapter deep dive, please like, subscribe, and share which part of the journey touched your soul in the comments. We'll see you in the next chapter.